Discover 5 incredible secrets to embrace pain and transform your life in amazing ways. In a small Midwestern town, Sarah had mastered the art of balancing her duties as a nurse with the unending demands of single motherhood. Yet, even as she rushed through the hospital's corridors, healing others, she felt a crushing weight on her chest, one that whispered persistent reminders of her struggles. Every late shift pulled her further away from dreams once vibrant, like a painting left too long in the sun. Hard work and resilience, her father had told her, echoing through her mind like a distant hymn. But what if that hard work only deepened her fatigue? The local hospital, once alive with hope, was now teetering on the edge of financial ruin. After another grueling double shift, Sarah stumbled upon an old, dusty box while cleaning her late father's belongings. The sight drew her in. Letters, yellowed with age and frayed at the edges, began to unfurl a different narrative, one of struggle, defeat, and triumphant resilience. Each word was a lifeline tossed into turbulent waters. As she absorbed his triumphs and defeats, it sparked something long buried inside her, a flicker of passion for writing. Her heart raced as memories flooded back. She once dreamed of sharing stories that illuminated the human experience. Now, buried under a mountain of responsibilities, the idea felt absurd, an echo of a girl she'd left behind. Yet, as days passed, the ink flowed slowly from her pen, crafting stories of pain and healing inspired by her experiences. Fueled by her father's words, Sarah felt a burst of energy like a sun breaking through storm clouds. But every time she shared her work with friends and colleagues, doubts diluted her high spirits. They laughed at the notion of a small-town nurse writing literature. "Just focus on your day job," they would say, shrugging off her aspirations as foolish. Their skepticism gnawed at her self-worth, each comment marking a new bruise on her fragile dreams. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With her pen feverishly moving, Sarah caught a glimpse of her father's legacy, a family forged in hardship, filled with tales that deserved to breathe. But then came a storm of rejection letters from local publishers, each one a slam against the already fragile door of her potential. The world seemed to conspire against her. Panic surged like a tide. What was she doing? What if she wasn't good enough? Every thought sharpened into a knife, pressing against her resolve, threatening to drown her weary spirit. There she sat, heart racing, fingers trembling above the paper. Each blank space stretched before her like an abyss filled with nothingness, a reminder of what could be, yet what felt so impossibly out of reach. She could either step away from the edge or leap into the unknown. Suddenly, the doorbell rang with a thud that echoed in her chest, pulling her from her thoughts. Was it opportunity knocking, or just another barrier along her steep path? The air thickened, her mind swirling with uncertainty as she stared at the door, knowing that whatever lay on the other side could change everything or be yet another disheartening setback. Her breath quickened as she approached the door, heart pounding like a drum. The jagged edges of hope and fear waged war within her as she hesitated, fingers hovering over the doorknob. Curiosity battled self-doubt. She needed to know who stood waiting, but fear of disappointment loomed over her like a dark cloud. Sarah swung open the door to find a slender figure wrapped in a coat that no longer seemed to fit her. It was Margaret, an old mentor from nursing school. Her smile was warm, but there was a seriousness in her eyes, an urgency that made the hairs on the back of Sarah's neck stand up. "I heard you were back in town," Margaret said, stepping through the threshold, uninvited yet undeniably welcome. "I wanted to check in on you." "Thanks, Margaret," Sarah replied, gesturing toward the living room. "I just finished a long shift. Come in." They settled on the couch, the familiar scent of coffee and old books enveloped them, sparking memories of late-night study sessions, laughter, and aspirations that once felt limitless. But the inflection in Margaret's voice brought Sarah back to the present. "I saw your name in a local writing contest entry list," she said, eyes glistening with excitement. "Why didn't you tell me you were writing?" Sarah's stomach knotted as the silence enveloped her. Should she weave a tapestry of excuses? Should she explain how each rejection had crushed her spirit just a little more? Instead, she took a breath, and the words tumbled out. I'm trying to write, but every time I share something, I get laughed at. A flicker of realization illuminated Margaret's expression, a knowing acknowledgement of the struggle inherent in pursuing a passion. You can't let them dictate your journey. Remember what we talked about? The best stories often come from those dark moments. They resonate because they speak the truth of struggle and resilience. The truth hung heavy in the air, her mentor's words digging deeper, confronting her insecurities directly. But they're right, she protested weakly. I'm just a nurse. This isn't a real career for me. Who defines what's real for you? Margaret leaned forward slightly, her voice steady. Don't let others belittle your dreams. You have a voice that deserves to be heard. Writing might just be your greatest rescue. Sarah felt a wave of emotions crash over her. Margaret's reassurance was a balm to her wounded ambitions. But amidst the fleeting comfort bubbled a fear, the fear of pursuing something that could fail again. This could be just another hard fall, leaving her with even more scars. What if this leads me nowhere? Sarah asked, the vulnerability bubbling just beneath the surface. Then you keep going. Art is about the process. Margaret smiled. It's the way you engage with your own truth, the way you confront your fears. The world needs your story. It needs to see what you've been through. For the first time, a slow shift began to take place within Sarah. The burden that had rested on her chest lightened, if only a little, as she realized that her voice, a narrative crafted from her very own pain, could be a source of strength not just for herself, but for others. Maybe I should try again. The words slipped from her mouth. They felt foreign yet exhilarating. Yes, you should. Enter that contest and share your story. A spark ignited as Sarah considered her next steps, battling uncertainties with the flicker of newfound determination. But even as hope blossomed, shadows of doubt loomed large in her mind. The path ahead was unfamiliar and fraught with risks, and her commitment to her writing would demand more than just her time, it would require her heart. As Margaret left, the tension in Sarah's mind twisted into a burning question: could she really navigate this path without losing herself in the process? In that moment, decisions spun like a frenzy of autumn leaves caught in a whirlwind. She had a choice to make, a leap to consider, and the stakes were higher than before. She knew the moment had arrived to redefine her fears and truly confront what writing might mean for her future. As she stood at the crossroads of abandon and courage, a resolve began to form, nudging her forward into the unknown. The next chapter of her life beckoned, yet the thought of it filled her with trepidation. Was she ready to leap into vulnerability again, risking the comfort of her routine? Would she embrace the pain needed to reclaim her narrative? Her mind buzzed with questions as she retraced her steps to the old box of letters. There, amidst memories of long-lost dreams, lay fragments of what could be a new story waiting to be penned. With trembling hands, she picked up her pen. The time had come to face the blank page head-on. The pen hovered over the blank page, a small yet daunting precipice on which her aspirations teetered. As Sarah stared at the whiteness before her, each heartbeat resonated like a countdown to an inevitable confrontation. What if the ink brought to life everything she feared? Or worse, what if it reflected her deepest insecurities? The afternoon light streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, yet the cozy warmth of home felt distant. The weight of expectations, both her own and those she felt from others, began to constrict around her, a familiar grip of anxiety. She remembered a saying Margaret had shared once: a writer is someone who writes, even when it's hard. Wasn't that what she had to do now? The words sparked a flicker of clarity. She had never considered herself a real writer. Now, however, she needed to claim that identity, if only for herself. Breathe, she whispered to herself. This is your story. Slowly, she allowed the thoughts swimming in her head to surface. Recall the nights she had spent scribbling fleeting ideas in her notebook, the way her heart raced each time she turned her life's struggles into prose. It was a light that had dimmed with every disheartening critique, but right now, in this moment, something deep within her began to stir. She wasn't merely reliving her past, she was poised to transform it into something new, something that could empower not just her, but others as well. Sarah took a deep breath, unearthing a memory, a patient she encountered during her tenure in the hospital. An elderly woman, eyes bright yet clouded with sorrow, had shared her story of survival through heartbreak. That story had stayed with Sarah long after the woman had left, a testament to the strength that resides in vulnerability. "Every scar holds a story," she recalled the woman saying, her voice full of grace. Suddenly, Sarah knew, her own scars could no longer remain hidden. They needed to be shared to connect, to resonate, to heal. The pen pressed against the page, and she began to write. Words flowed as memories spilled, a mixture of failures, fears, and the flickering lights of her dreams. The ink became a cathartic release, unraveling her deepest truths braid by braid, revealing the fabric of her life. But just as she began to settle into the rhythm of expression, self-doubt crept back in, knotting her stomach. What if no one wanted to hear her story? What if it fell flat? The nagging thought brushed against her confidence like a shadow, threatening to darken her page once again. As the afternoon wore on, Sarah paused, leaning back in her chair, weighed down by indecision. The path she had chosen demanded authenticity, and authenticity required bravery, a courage she wasn't quite certain she possessed. She remembered Margaret's insistence that pain could be a source of power. What if she embraced that notion? Instead of shying away from her vulnerabilities, what if she laid them bare? The thought electrified her heart, igniting a fervor of determination. Suddenly, the door swung open in her mind, revealing a world where failure was merely a stepping stone toward mastery, where her worth as a writer wasn't determined by others but by herself alone. This is about me, and my journey, she thought, rejuvenated. But as she prepared to dive deeper, a flicker of hesitation re-emerged. Could she really show the rawness of her experiences? The darkness she carried had shadows longer than she cared to admit. The pen trembled in her hand as the weight of her aspirations combined with the burden of her fears. Embracing her vulnerability felt terrifying yet perhaps necessary. The ink paused mid-sentence, her heart racing as she confronted the hardest question of all: what if revealing her truth paved the way for others to do the same? What if her story was not just a personal journey but the catalyst for an unspoken connection among those who grappled with their own vulnerabilities? She closed her eyes, pondering the power held within every penned word. The moment felt pivotal, ripe with potential adjustment. The next chapter awaited, not only in life but within her own story. Could she truly grasp this chance to transform fear into strength? With renewed focus, Sarah dipped the pen back into the ink, determined to uncover her narrative, even amidst the uncertainty. The blank page called to her once more, and with each stroke, she felt one step closer to uncovering not just her story, but perhaps the truth that lay buried deep within. A hesitant smile formed on her lips. She was ready to discover what lay ahead if she dared take the plunge. As the ink soaked into the paper, she could almost hear a distant whisper of possibility urging her forward. The journey was only beginning. Would she answer the call? As her pen resumed its dance across the page, Sarah felt both exhilaration and trepidation swell within her. Each word she etched out brought an increasing clarity to her thoughts, yet the shadows of past critiques still loomed overhead, lurking just beyond her periphery. Each stroke of ink became a small rebellion against the hesitations that threatened to paralyze her. A memory flickered, uninvited, of that late night when Margaret had pressed a book into her hands, an anthology of personal stories. Their shared over-caffeinated discussions had sparked something in Sarah, a deep, unrelenting desire to explore the power of the personal narrative. Those tales of failure forged into triumph had resonated, and now, she felt the echoes of those stories igniting her resolve. In the silence of her room, with only the scratching of her pen breaking the stillness, Sarah questioned if her own narrative could inspire the same transformation. A moment of vulnerability struck her like a tidal wave. As she wrote about her struggles with anxiety, the disenchantment of her career choice, and her incessant pursuit of approval, she felt an undeniable lightness. Here, she was not just an assembly of flaws or apprehensions, she was a tapestry woven from experiences, each thread interlacing her past with uncharted possibilities. With each sentence she crafted, a sense of ownership grew. Authenticity through vulnerability, she whispered aloud, testing the phrase like a bittersweet mantra. She considered how many people might be trapped in silence, just like she had been, wrestling with the heaviness of their own untold stories. But then, doubt slithered back into her mind, stitching its way into her heart. Was she truly enough to tell this story? What if her words weren't articulate enough to resonate, or worse, What if they invited ridicule? The critical voices she once fought against threatened to creep back into her consciousness, picking apart her in-process work, sneering at her attempt to expose her life. Breathing deeply, she turned her gaze to the window. The sun was now dipping below the horizon, casting elongated shadows on the walls and furniture. Shadows transformed into comfortable silhouettes, examples of how darkness could also create beauty. Suddenly, she let out a soft laugh. Wasn't that exactly what she was attempting to convey? Sorrow and triumph, she murmured, sensing a new fire igniting within her. Each shadow represented something she had battled through. They needed acknowledgement, not dismissal. She realized that revealing her truths was a step toward freeing not just herself, but others who felt inclined to hide in the shadows too. She decided to take a risk. Flipping through her notes, she uncovered old scraps of thoughts, half-formed poems, and sketches of ideas. Each piece bore witness to long-neglected emotions, raw and untamed. This is where she would start. The stories of her darkest nights could drive healing into the lives of others, she felt it. Sarah could feel yet another wave of nausea settle. What if embracing this journey meant confronting people from her past? What if they re-emerged, trying to rewrite her narrative? But did she truly want to craft her identity around fear? No. This time, she would take the reins and mold her story into a force that empowered her own narrative. Fueled by this epiphany, she scribbled frantically, allowing the rush of thought to pour out without hesitation. She captured the exhilaration and despair, intertwined them beautifully, and chronicled her personal evolution with fierce determination. What started as a recounting of her pain transformed into a manifesto of liberation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity lost in both thought and creation, she found the courage to let herself dream beyond the page. Would someone need to read this, need her story? Did it belong to the world beyond her room? The ink splattered across the page, and a renewed sense of purpose surged through her veins. As she set the pen down, a profound silence settled around her, filled only by the pounding of her heart and the remnants of her breathing. Out of this stillness, she felt a strange exhilaration. She hadn't merely written, she had unleashed a part of herself, laying her fears bare while solidifying her truth. But the question loomed, echoing louder than the silence: what next? There was a world waiting beyond, a future that would require not only the courage to write but the bravery to share herself fully. Would she step into the unknown, ready to confront the potential backlash? The weight of her decision rested heavily upon her. Would she allow this cathartic revelation to transform into action? Even as excitement coursed through her veins, doubt flickered like a candle about to extinguish. A threshold was forming, and she could feel it threatening to challenge every notion she had about herself. With that realization, she picked the pen back up. The blank space before her beckoned once more, but this time, it called not for fear but for courage. Would she dare to document not just her words, but her life's transformation? As the ink glided swiftly across the page, she conjured the internal strength to assert her truth into the world. As Sarah's pen scratched on, a single thought emerged, bold and jubilant: the journey had only just begun, and every story, including her own, deserved to be told bravely and beautifully. The air tingled with anticipation. Was it the ink ready to reveal its secrets, or was it Sarah's heart poised for its next leap? The answer awaited, hanging in the balance of her next words. The morning sun poured in through the window, bathing Sarah's workspace in a warm golden hue that felt both inviting and daunting. She stared at the sheets of paper sprawled before her, a chaotic amalgamation of her thoughts, heart, and the fears she was learning to confront. The adrenaline from unleashing her narrative had faded into a sharp clarity. She could not ignore the pivotal next step, sharing her story. With fresh resolve, she reached for her phone and accessed her social media account, the digital world buzzing with the lives of others. What if she began there? Could she post snippets, fragments of her writing? Her heart raced at the prospect, a cocktail of excitement and dread brewing within her. Swipe. Scroll. The saturated images and curated posts of confidence elicited a shudder of insecurity. Those voices of doubt returned with their familiar sneers: is this really worth sharing? Who would care about your struggles when everyone else seemed so polished? She took a breath, reminding herself of her mantra: authenticity through vulnerability. Closing her eyes, she envisioned her words leaving her, not as sacrifices to be evaluated or criticized but as offerings, genuine and raw. They were sparks that could ignite something in someone else, perhaps a connection, a conversation, maybe even a moment of clarity for another lost soul. She let the thought settle, holding it close like a warm ember instead of allowing the flame of fear to extinguish it. Starting small, she decided. Maybe a single paragraph, a teaser for what was to come. Something that would resonate without laying everything bare in one go. Her fingers flew over the screen, quickly typing a careful yet poetic summary of her journey, encompassing both the darkness she had faced and the light that was gradually taking its place. This is for those who find themselves standing at a threshold, grappling with their own stories. I am learning to embrace my shadows, transforming them into my strength. The words filled her with an electric conviction, but the second-guessing soon threatened its momentum. Would they laugh? Would they relate? What if no one came forward to engage with her declaration? In that moment, those questions shifted from paralyzing doubts to explorative curiosities. What if someone did relate? What if her story ignited a spark in another? Taking the plunge would mean risking vulnerability, but what lay beyond that fear was connection. She pressed post and watched her heart race as she saw the words fill the screen before her eyes. Beep. A notification. Sarah's fingers curled tightly around the phone. She opened it with bated breath, surprised to find a comment from a high school friend she hadn't spoken to in years. Wow. I needed this today. Thank you for being brave. A rush of disbelief flooded her. Somewhere in the depths of her vulnerability, a bridge had been built to another soul. This singular moment felt like a validation of her initiative, a confirmation that she had stepped into a realm of purpose, however small it seemed. But as she savored the joy of connection, the question remained, could she sustain the vulnerability necessary for this journey? The weight of exposing her truth made her pulse quicken, yet the prospect of engaging in an honest dialogue exhilarated her. A vision of expansive possibilities unfolded. If she could inspire even one person to rise from their own shadows, then each word would serve its purpose. Fueled by this joyous commingling of excitement and apprehension, she began to formulate a plan. She would post regularly, drawing out her experiences into digestible snippets while also responding to the comments, opening a channel for dialogue. Yet, even amidst her soaring ambitions, a shadow of fear lingered, hovering just at the edges, whispering of the backlash she might face. People from her past, the ones who had judged her choices, ridiculed her pain, could rear their heads again, reshaping her narrative to fit their agendas. Would she be able to shield her newfound resolve from external judgment? As she crafted her next post, reflecting on her anxiety, she recalled the stories that had sparked her fire. The blend of sorrow and triumph. It would echo her authentic journey while inviting conversations that could lead to collective healing, perhaps even revealing those hidden strengths within others. With newfound determination, she pressed the button to share again, each click etching away at her past fears, a spontaneous commitment to the authenticity that had become her torch and anchor. But this time, while she shared pieces of her story with the world, how far would she go to protect herself? The potential for something magnificent loomed ahead. This was only the beginning. But Sarah knew she would have to confront deeper anxieties. What if this pursuit led her back to the very people she wished to evade? The thought flickered ominously in the corners of her mind. If she was brave enough to step into this light, she would need courage far beyond what she had yet summoned. With her pen poised once more, she sensed the proverbial flame rekindling within her. The trials of this path were waiting to unfold, and testing her mettle would be inevitable. Would she rise to embrace this challenge of sharing her truth, vulnerable yet resilient? The question lingered like the scent of damp earth after rain. Sarah had merely begun to scratch the surface of her transformation. What revelations would surface when she dared to invite her past back into her narrative? Morning light crept through the window, illuminating the delicate chaos of Sarah's workspace. The remnants of her written thoughts lay scattered, remnants of a battle fought on paper. She had begun the journey into sharing her truth, and with it came an unfamiliar exhilaration intertwined with tension. The warmth of connection was intoxicating, yet beneath it stirred the unease of a pendulum swinging between liberation and fear. As the day progressed, each notification from her posts became droplets of adrenaline, fueling her commitment to this new chapter. She immersed herself in the responses, hanging on every word from friends and strangers who resonated with her narrative. Yet, behind each like and supportive comment lurked the specter of her past, a collection of memories that taunted her with reminders of those who could easily dismiss her journey. Did she have the strength to face their judgments if they resurfaced? With every new post, she felt herself growing bolder, dissecting her feelings with surgical precision. She decided it was time to be more candid, each sentence crafted not just for transparency but also to unravel the threads of her own misconceptions. What had she believed about herself that no longer held true? What could she uncover through deeper introspection? Frustration bubbled up at the thought of her earlier self. For years, she'd been a prisoner to her insecurities, dancing around her emotions rather than embracing them. What if peeling back these layers invited the very judgment she feared? Yet, as she examined this thought, a flicker of realization surged. Her fears were not a reflection of her worth but rather of a world that often misunderstood vulnerability. Determined to harness this energy, Sarah set a new goal: to explore the darkest corners of her experience, turning pain into illumination. She penned her next post, delving into the solitude and silence that had once suffocated her. "I once believed that suffering was a sign of weakness," she typed. "Now, I know it's the soil where resilience takes root." Before pressing post, she hesitated. It was a raw reflection, steeped in the memory of stagnant nights spent wrestling with doubt. Would it resonate? Would she expose herself to those who might dismiss her revelations? Taking a deep breath, she steeled her resolve and clicked the button. This time, the reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. Messages flooded in, some validating her journey, others sharing their own scars. She felt a swell of accomplishment, yet a voice still echoed within her like a distant thunder, warning her that the deeper she went, the greater the potential backlash. As she navigated through these responses, a familiar name caught her eye. One from a childhood friend who had never understood her struggles. Anxiety bubbled in her chest as she opened the comment, her heart racing at the possibilities. "You think being open like this makes you strong? You just look lost," it read, dripping with scorn. For a moment, time paused. Her instincts screamed to retreat, to protect her new flame of courage from that chilling wind of judgment. She could easily slip back into the shadows, shrunk by harsh words. Yet, that moment became a crucible for her spirit, a choice between shrinking back and standing firm. With determination swirling in her, she crafted a measured response. "Perhaps being lost is a part of finding myself. I may be exploring uncharted waters, but I'd rather do that than drown in silence." As she clicked send, something shifted. The dread that once chained her unfurled, leaving space for resilience to flourish. Her decision to respond with strength sparked a fire, illuminating her path forward. But now, as she lay her head upon the pillow that evening, Sarah knew this confrontation marked a pivotal juncture. Venturing deeper into her story was inevitable, and she felt both exhilarated and apprehensive about what lay ahead. How much more of her truth would she unveil? Would this newfound courage be enough to fend off the shadows looming behind her? The night deepened. Around her, an echoing silence filled the room until a revelation emerged in glimmers from within. Each day would require fresh courage to unveil yet another layer of her identity. Would she be ready to face the possible consequences of diving headfirst into the depths of her past? With the dawn on the horizon, the next chapter awaited her, cloaked in the mystery of transformation. What would she discover about herself in this vulnerable dance with truth? The first rays of dawn filtered gently through the curtains, coaxing Sarah from her restless sleep. With the night as silence still echoing in her mind, she turned the unsettling experiences of recent days over in her head. The comment from her childhood friend hovered persistently there, a reminder of how deeply embedded the fear of judgment was. But instead of retreating from that fear, an ember sparked within her, a call to break free from the limitations it imposed. She rose from her bed, the crisp morning air invigorating her senses and amplifying that flicker of determination. Today could signal a rebirth, a redefining of her relationship with her past. Fueled by the possibility of transformation, she revisited her workspace, ready to delve deeper into herself. Last night's revelation echoed. Courage was a daily requirement, not a fleeting feeling. With a notebook in hand, Sarah began to jot down thoughts that earlier would have paralyzed her. Each sentence transformed fear into actionable steps. Through deliberation and vulnerability, she could reshape her narrative. She first noted the memories of her solitude, then shifted toward realizations of resilience. With every word written, she found less to fear. Her pain could serve as a map guiding others through their own struggles. Yet, with this deeper exploration came new doubts. Did her effort carry weight? Would others truly find strength in her struggles? Sarah paused, pen hovering over the page. The echoes of judgment threatened to drown her spirit again. But she took a deep breath, visibly shaking off the uncertainty. If she faltered now, after making strides toward authenticity, it would simply shift her reliance to external validation. The day progressed, and she filled pages with reflections, recounting moments she once deemed weak. There was clarity now. The narrative began to shift from poor me to a portrait of evolution. It wasn't about suffering less, it was about harnessing suffering to foster growth. The idea blossomed within her, and she started constructing a new post-one designed not just to share but to empower. "This is not just my story," she typed. "This is a testament to the strength we cultivate in adversity. I want to invite others to join me on this journey. Together we can discover the resilience lying dormant beneath our scars." As she crafted this, newfound hope sparked across her fingertips, connected to the knowledge that perhaps her words might resonate beyond her own experience. What if her exposure and courage acted as kindling to ignite someone else's own advocacy for authenticity? Suddenly, a message notification jolted Sarah from her reverie. It was from a follower who had recently begun engaging with her posts, seeking a community for their own struggles. "I feel so alone in my battle, your words make it clear I'm not," they wrote. For a moment, she felt overwhelmed. Could this be what she had feared? The responsibility of someone else's journey resting on her shoulders? But in that fleeting shadow of doubt, she perceived a choice: either to retreat back into herself or further embrace this burgeoning role as a guide and source of hope. By responding, she noticed a deepening sense of purpose, reinforcing her narrative as one of strength rather than solitude. "Thank you for reaching out," she typed back, steady fingers flying across the screen. "You are definitely not alone in this, and I'm here to support you as we navigate through together." The connection was invigorating. It reminded her of the ripple effect vulnerability could create. She had been in the depths of that solitude, suffocating on fear, and now she understood it was time to forge ahead with authenticity. That evening, she opened her notebook again to gather her thoughts, aware that each day unveiled a layer of her character yet to be discovered. The ongoing invitation to self-exploration was both exhilarating and terrifying. But nestled in that fear was an unyielding drive to confront whatever shadows lingered ahead. As she scribbled her final notes for the day, urgency bubbled within her. How far could she push the limits of her vulnerability now? Did she possess the strength to face the responses that would inevitably come from these disclosures? With a sense of clarity blossoming, she closed her notebook and gazed at the sunset's reflection. A glimmer of fear remained, a whisper that urged caution. Yet, among the doubt, the embers of courage ignited a fresh determination. The moment had come to embrace the leaping uncertainty, to plunge deeper into her narrative, even if it meant coming face to face with the ramifications of her choices. The thrill of transformation pulsed in the air around her, and Sarah knew that the next chapter was already writing itself. Would she possess the fortitude to illuminate the darkest corners of her story? As the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows cast by the fading light crept silently into Sarah's room, mirroring her internal turmoil. The excitement that had bubbled up only hours before dwindled under the weight of uncertainty. The responsibility of becoming a guiding voice loomed heavily, threading doubt between her ambitions. What if she failed? What if she exposed herself but found only more judgment instead of understanding? With the notebook lying open, pages filled with her revolving thoughts underlining her quest for transparency, Sarah's heart raced as she considered the gravity of her decision. This leap toward vulnerability was not a mere act of catharsis, it could affect lives beyond her own. Would they trust her? Was she truly equipped to lead others through their trials when she was still grappling with her own demons? Each heartbeat echoed the fear of inadequacy, of claiming a space she might not wholly deserve. Yet, a sense of urgency persisted. Her tone grew stronger with every response she received from followers. It wasn't just about her anymore, she was becoming a conduit for others seeking connection and understanding. Realizing that she had to confront her inner critic head-on, Sarah devised a plan. She would create a series of posts dedicated to themes of uncertainty and courage. Each entry would explore personal anecdotes that laid bare her vulnerabilities, encouraging dialogue with her audience. A platform where shame transformed into shared strength could inspire others to voice their burdens as she stepped into the light herself. On the following day, she gathered information from her previous notes, dissecting her most poignant experiences. As she reflected, an uncomfortable heat crawled up her spine. Revisiting those memories was a double-edged sword. While it would empower her narrative, it could also force her to relive painful moments. But Sarah recognized the irony, that discomfort was the very essence of growth. With her camera rolling, she positioned herself in front of her desk, the soothing hum of her surroundings easing her nerves. On screen, she spoke slowly and deliberately, reciting the stories of heartbreak and resilience she had bottled up for so long. Admitting failure marked a shift. No longer was she the solitary woman overshadowed by judgment, but a figure standing tall against the gale, navigating uncertainty. As she pressed post, her pulse quickened. A part of her desperately wanted to recoil, to delete it all, to tuck away the exposed edges into safety. But she resisted that impulse, recalling the messages she had received. Those connections wove a tapestry of shared experiences that transformed fear into a collective journey toward healing. The response was immediate. Notifications flooded her screen. Comments poured in, validating her courage in sharing tales of their own. It was both exhilarating and terrifying, pushing her gently into a role she had long feared but now appeared to be embracing. Affirmation surged through her, nurturing a burning desire for further exploration. Days turned into weeks filled with newfound collaboration. Each post built upon the last, eliciting conversations sparked by shared pain and triumphs. She learned to respond not just as a leader but as a fellow traveler, navigating through the wilderness of personal struggles alongside her followers. Yet shadows remained. Some messages carried echoes of bitterness and doubt, targeting her authenticity. "You think you can tell me how to overcome life's battles when you're still in the thick of your own?" Such remarks clawed at her confidence, forcing her to question every post, every shared insight. What if her attempts to lead emerged from unresolved wounds? The idea nagged at her, compelling her to dig deeper. Fractured by uncertainty but bolstered by the support of those she inspired, Sarah faced a pivotal question: how could she transform the voices of doubt into catalysts for her own growth? As she settled back at her desk, she realized it wasn't only about vulnerability, it was about redefining it as an asset for both herself and others. Each doubt could morph into a stepping stone rather than a pitfall. The landscape of her story was still evolving, and she could feel another transformation lurking just out of reach, urging her to uncover its essence. Would she find the resolve to redefine her relationship with fear, allowing it to guide rather than hinder? Sarah sat at her desk, fingers poised over the keyboard, her mind racing through the various responses she had received. Each message held a fragment of truth. Those who questioned her sincerity were not mere antagonists but reflections of her most daunting fears. If she was to advance further in this journey, she needed to confront what lay at the core of her story. This was not just about sharing experiences, it was about understanding her vulnerabilities and their origins. In the days that followed, she began refining her approach. Each morning, she would wake early, the world still draped in silence, and devote that time to introspection. With a warm mug of tea warming her hands, she would jot down her thoughts, mapping out not only what she wanted to share but why it mattered to her. This process transformed her morning routine into a sanctuary, allowing her to disentangle her intentions from her fears. The more she wrote, the more clarity emerged from the fog of self-doubt. It wasn't merely the act of recalling painful memories that fueled her advocacy, it was recognizing how these experiences had sculpted her identity. She began to see that her scars were not signs of her brokenness but badges of survival. She tapped into those feelings, learning to narrate them in a way that rendered them relatable and insightful to her audience. Vulnerability now felt like a well of strength rather than a chasm of inadequacy. Bright smiles crept across her face as she began to outline her next post, titled Navigating Uncertainty, A Journey Through Shadows. It would encapsulate not only her struggles but the lessons embedded within them. She intentionally linked her personal narratives to universal themes: loss, fear, resilience in a way that invited her followers to recognize their own journeys reflected in her stories. But as she hit post, she felt the familiar twist of anxiety. This entry delved deeper than the previous ones, unearthing facets of her psyche that remained hidden. Would this prompt curiosity or backlash? Would her honesty inspire support or provoke more doubters? The post lingered on her profile, gaining traction. Heartfelt comments flooded in, and for every critique that loomed, there were dozens willing to walk alongside her, sharing their stories. This unexpected outpouring reminded her of the deep connection that had taken root within this virtual realm. Her followers didn't just seek wisdom, they sought solidarity in their struggles, yet, amidst the positivity, a solitary comment caught her attention like a thorn. Your posts seem contrived. If you're still struggling, how can you speak to anyone else's fight? The words pierced through her wall of newfound confidence, eliciting a response she hadn't anticipated. She had begun to foster growth, yet doubt threatened to steal away her progress. In that moment of turmoil, Sarah realized that self-doubt was woven into the fabric of her character. Rather than eliminating it, she could engage with it. She decided to create a new series addressing not just her triumphs but also her failures and insecurities. What if she laid bare her current struggles and allowed her followers to join her in questioning, exploring, and growing? In the following weeks, she crafted posts that reflected her ongoing journey, inviting her audience to share the experience of grappling with self-criticism. Responses began to flourish, and conversations blossomed into a tapestry of shared understanding. It was as though her vulnerability had unlocked a treasure chest of hidden connections, leading to deeper discussions and shared lessons. As Sarah sat at her desk one evening, warm light spilling gently from her lamp, she felt a surge of intent. The doubts still nagged, but she had acquired a new lens through which to view them. They were not hindrances but markers of her journey, signs of an evolving narrative that embraced every facet of human experience, yet, questions simmered beneath the surface. How far could she extend her influence? Would her choice to delve into vulnerability cause her to confront parts of herself she had long avoided? The looming uncertainty enveloped her, and with it, a profound realization began to unfurl. The real journey had only just begun, with truths waiting to be unveiled. Would she muster the courage to dive further into the shadows lurking within, ready to confront the fears that seemed ready to leap out at her? The morning sun slipped into Sarah's workspace, illuminating the myriad of thoughts she had curated over the past few months. She had traveled through the labyrinth of her vulnerabilities, emerging with newfound strength and a clearer sense of purpose. Each post had solidified the truth within her. Her journey was valuable, not just for her but for others navigating their own struggles. In the embrace of vulnerability, she had discovered a wellspring of resilience, and she resolved to turn that into a cohesive narrative. Sarah's determination spurred her to create a compilation of her most impactful posts. It would be a collection of stories, real, raw, and unfiltered, highlighting her journey from fear to empowerment. This book would encapsulate not merely her struggles but the lessons she had unearthed, serving as a guiding light for those feeling lost in darkness. As Sarah began the painstaking process of structuring her first few chapters, she felt all her past self-doubt deflate into a distant memory. This was her chance to claim her identity not just as a nurse but a writer and advocate. She meticulously crafted each story, pouring her heart into the pages, detailing moments of despair and the glimmers of hope that followed. She remembered the vibrant conversations sparked by her posts, how readers had resonated with her journey. The youth with a comment that said they had felt unworthy, and how Sarah's words encouraged them to begin pursuing their art, the woman who shared her own struggles and found solace in mutual understanding. Each story became not just part of her narrative but threads knitting them together in a larger tapestry of human experience. After a relentless week, Sarah found herself at a turning point. She had drafted ideas for her book but now needed validation. With trepidation hugging her heart, she reached out to her mentor, Margaret, asking if she could review a few excerpts. Margaret responded promptly, impressed by Sarah's courage to weave her life into words. "You possess an extraordinary voice, Sarah. Your authenticity shines through your anecdotes," she encouraged, adding that such narratives could comfort and inspire others. Encouraged by Margaret's validation, Sarah took the plunge and submitted her book proposal to several publishers, feeling a thrill of excitement dance through her veins. It was real now. The idea had morphed into tangible action. Days turned into weeks, and as the notification of an acceptance email finally graced her screen, the breath she had been holding burst forth in a euphoric gasp. Her debut book, Embracing Shadows, A Journey Through Resilience, would soon be published. She could hardly believe the culmination of her hard work was set to be shared with the world. As she prepared for the book launch, fear flickered in the back of her mind. What if some ridiculed her now for laying her story bare? Perhaps a lone voice would dismiss the worth of her words. Yet, Sarah stepped back into the growth she had cultivated. She knew this was not just about her, it was about fostering connection, growth, and the freedom to voice one's truth. The day of her launch arrived, and the cozy bookstore overflowed with friends, family, and strangers curious to hear her speak. Standing at the lectern, anticipation pulsed through the crowd, and Sarah felt both fear and exhilaration dance within her. As she shared vulnerable snippets from her life and read excerpts from her book, acceptance radiated from every corner of the room. By the end of the event, the applause roared louder than any lingering doubt ever could. It was a moment of profound realization. She had conquered not just the fears that held her back, but she had also proved to herself that her voice mattered. Overwhelmed with recognition, Sarah felt an empowering certainty wash over her. The doubts that once resided within her had transformed into a steadfast sense of accomplishment and belonging. Sarah had navigated the rocky terrain that led her to this moment of triumph and connection. She had transformed her pain into purpose, and in doing so, she had defined herself by her choices and actions. The path stretched ahead, illuminated by trust in herself and the profound understanding that while vulnerability may be daunting, it was the very essence that forged authentic connection. As she left the event, laughter and discussions echoing behind her, she savored the knowledge that she had truly embraced her journey, not merely surviving but thriving. Now, it's your turn. If you've been inspired by Sarah's journey from pain to purpose, you need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help these stories reach others who need them. Comment your reactions and theories about Sarah's incredible transformation. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and ignite their own journeys of vulnerability.